Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 157. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. I have been doing a lot of research lately, geeking out on decluttering, and especially how cognitive biases in our brain cause us to hold on to what we don't need and also buy what we don't need. So we're going to do sort of a mini series here on the podcast where this episode, we're going to be focusing on the 7 cognitive biases that are making it hard to declutter. And then next week, we're going to be focusing on the cognitive biases that cause us to buy what we don't need. So this is going to be a really tactical episode. So grab that notebook and pen. And what do you say? Let's dive into today's episode. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear off some counter space. Let's do this. So we are less than a week away for the deadline to submit any of your reviews for the 2-year Podiversary review giveaway. We've already had 8 people that are participating so far. I would love to see what we had in the summer, which was like at least 20 people, because what is up for grabs, in case you didn't know, are 2 $50 Amazon gift cards. So all the information is in the show notes about how to enter the giveaway, and I will be announcing the 2 winners on the podcast on Tuesday, October 1st. So let's go ahead. We're going to dive into these cognitive biases. So the first question is, what is a cognitive bias anyway? Well, it is a systematic error in thinking that's caused by the tendency of our human brains to simplify information through personal experiences and preferences. They're kind of like shortcuts for our brains, but it doesn't always mean that we're making the most rational decisions. And so there are several that impact decluttering specifically, and I'm going to be linking to not only some of my episodes that talk about these, but also a couple of great articles. One is from my friend Julia Obenga from Rich in What Matters, and the other is from Becoming Minimalist, which is Joshua Becker. So you can go ahead and check out those links in the show notes as well. But the question is, how does our brain make it difficult for us to declutter? So we are going to dive into these 7 cognitive biases. And the first is the mere exposure effect. And the mere exposure effect describes our tendency to develop preferences for things simply because we are familiar with them, that we are exposed to them. And that actually really dovetails with our second cognitive bias, which is the mere ownership effect, which is that people who own a good tend to evaluate it more positively than people who do not. So if we are exposed to something or we own it, then we are going to develop a preference for it. We are going to evaluate it positively. And in episode 4, we talked about the longer that we own something, the more memories are attached to it, so it's harder to let go. And that really compounds that mere ownership effect. And the third cognitive bias, which is really similar to the both of these as well, is the endowment effect. So what this means is that people are more willing to retain an object they own rather than acquire the same object when they don't own it. We overvalue what we own already. And the crazy thing is that somebody's willingness, their maximum willingness to pay, is lower than what they're willing to accept for the same object they own, even if the item was obtained moments ago. So let's say that you went to Target and you bought a Stanley Cup. I don't even know how much those are, but you bought a Stanley Cup for $25. Okay. And then 6 months later, you were going to sell it. You would have a hard time wanting to sell it for anything less than $25, even if the value has depreciated, because we are also more willing to hold on to something. Have you ever tried to sell something on Facebook Marketplace and someone is like lowballing you and you're like, no, I am not going to do that? Part of that is the endowment effect, that you just cannot fathom accepting a lower amount for something when you own it. And so episode 9 is a great one that I'll link in the show notes, because it's all about why we hold on to something just because what we paid for it. Okay, we are moving along quickly with all of these cognitive biases. Hopefully your head's not spinning. The next is the status quo bias, which means that a preference is there for the maintenance of the status quo is our baseline, right? So that baseline is taken as a reference point, and anything that is a change to that might be a loss or a gain. But when it comes to our stuff, because we value and sometimes overvalue what we own, anything that is changing from that status quo is considered a loss, which is related to our 5th cognitive bias, which is loss aversion. And a lot of these from the names are pretty self-explanatory, but this is our tendency to avoid losses rather than acquiring equivalent gains. And Joshua Becker has a fantastic article on Becoming Minimalist about this, which I mentioned before. But the interesting thing is that the pain psychologically of us losing something is about twice as powerful of the pleasure of gaining it. And an example that he gives in the article is that it's better for us not to lose $20 rather than to find $20, which is really interesting. So what this means is that we're holding on to items, not because they're useful to us, not because they, spark joy or anything like that, but because of the perceived loss of parting with them. And part of this has to do with how much we paid for it, right? And that is related to number 6, which is the sunk cost fallacy. So the sunk cost fallacy means that we allow the costs of stuff that we've already bought, so costs that are already sunk, to influence our future decisions, in this case, whether we keep something or let it go. So if we paid a lot of money for something, we're less willing to let it go, even though the money was already spent. And what we don't think about is the true cost that we're paying with it, with our time, with our energy, and all of these resources. But we are reluctant to admit we made a poor decision or that we've wasted resources because we do not want to come across as being wasteful. So that was a lot. And I do have one more before we start talking about what do we actually do about this. And the last cognitive bias I want to mention is attachment theory, which is that once an attachment to an item is formed, the potential loss of it is perceived as a threat to ourself and our identity, because the longer we have something, the more memories are attached and the more it has to do with our identity. And in episode 125, I actually dove into the 4 attachment styles. They are secure, anxious, avoidant, dismissive, or fearful. And depending on your attachment style from your childhood, it can impact whether decluttering is harder or easier for you. And this is especially the case for sentimental items because we have so many memories and an emotional attachment to sentimental items. And in episode 11, I talk about how to specifically deal with sentimental items. Again, as a reminder, not anything that you want to start with on your decluttering journey. We want to start with the unemotional, unsentimental things. So now that you know you have at least 7 cognitive biases that are working against you when it comes to decluttering, what do we do? Great question. The first thing we want to do is, of course, being aware of what cognitive biases are the strongest for you. Some of them are probably bigger culprits than others. Perhaps it is that you've noticed that you're unwilling to let things go because of how much you paid for it, or even if you don't need it, there's that sunk cost fallacy and you're still wanting to hold on. So just being aware of what is impacting you when it comes to decluttering. And to go to that vision that I've been talking about in the last couple episodes about what you want your clutter-free life to look like, and asking whether the item that you're making a decision about brings you closer or further away to that vision. You really have to have a clear vision in mind, because otherwise these cognitive biases, these shortcuts in your brain, are going to be to you the most logical thing. But if we see them as biases, then we can overcome them. One of the pieces of advice in the Becoming Minimalist article I really loved was that instead of focusing on what you're giving up when you're letting something go, focus on what you're gaining through owning less. And we talk a lot about our precious resources of time, energy, focus, and attention. And of course, money is another big one. But I find for the moms I work with, they want more time and more energy and to be present with their kids. And being able to gain this through what you are giving up, quote unquote, is something to consider. And the last thing is to work with a friend or a coach to help you work through your own cognitive biases and to help you with those mindset shifts. We do have our free Facebook group at tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. We just started a new decluttering challenge yesterday. So if you want to join the group, now is a great time. And also as a reminder, my coaching fees will be going up on October 1st. So if you want to snag the super low price of $47 for a 60-minute session, where we can walk through all of the major cognitive biases that you are dealing with, I am going to be increasing my pricing October 1st. You do not need to complete the call by October 1st, but you do need to book the call by then. So that information will be in the show notes. So I hope that that was a helpful overview of these 7 cognitive biases that cause clutter and what we can start doing about them. Next Tuesday, I am going to be talking about kind of the flip side, how it impacts our consumption behavior and buying. And on Thursday, I'm going to be airing a coaching call with my friend Natalie, and we are going to be working on decluttering her bedroom. So for any of you that have cluttered bedrooms, I hope that you will listen, and I can't wait to see you on Thursday. Bye for now. If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama. You're overwhelmed, in fact, but 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words. They'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.